Good morning, everyone. We're just gonna give it a 60 seconds just to let everyone in the room, and then we'll begin our program. Thank you, Howard. All right, we have people coming into the room, but let's begin. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 13th Annual Energy and Environmental Conference. I'm Anthony Forgione. I'm the Director of Business Development here at the HIA-LI, and we're really excited to have a wonderful panel this morning to talk about what is going on with energy today and energy in the future. Before we begin, next slide, Alan. I do want to thank our sponsors, both PSEG Long Island and National Grid, who sponsor this every year, we're excited to bring this energy update to you. I also want to thank our board of directors. Our board, and many of them are on this call this morning, have been very supportive of the HIA-LI, and especially since COVID hit, they've really stepped up and supported our organization so we can support the various companies across Long Island and continue the economic growth of Long Island. Before we begin, I do want to mention that on November 19th, we are having our Women's Leading the Way from 8 to 10 at the LGBT Network office. It also will be virtual for people who want to do it that way. And I would encourage you to attend. We're also going to have a little craft fair at the LGBT. So it should be a wonderful program. So with that, let me introduce the President and CEO of the HIA-LI, Terry Alisi Miceli. Terry?
Thanks so much, Anthony, and good morning again, everyone. Welcome to our 13th annual energy update. Wow, it's been a crazy 19 months, as many of you know. And we've been there alongside you as a business organization, as a one-stop resource, really, for a lot of information that's come down the pike from not only the governor's office, but the Suffolk County COVID Task Force. So we continue to do that as we go through the pandemic and we come out of the pandemic. And I need to say, we've been so proud of many of our members who have repurposed their plants to provide personal protection equipment and help people with PPP loans, and just done some things, remarkable things, and been able to pivot through this. Doesn't surprise me, we're Long Island strong. So, through this period, as we talk to our members and talk to the Long Island business community, one of the challenges we face and continue to face is to come up with more new and sustainable type of energy solutions, right? So, and we have some experts on this morning that'll talk about some of those current and future energy updates. So as business owners that are with us, you are constantly looking for ways to pivot and grow and streamline, and this is one of the ways to do that. Many of you know that the HIA-LI is one of the recognized voices for Long Island business, a powerful force in regional and economic development. We also support the Long Island Innovation Park at Hauppauge, which is the largest in the Northeast and only second behind Silicon Valley. And I bring that up because as we did a sustainability study several years ago, one of the things that came up is, how do we help create, again, solutions for people in this park, one of them being energy solutions. So this is so timely, this topic. We have an Energy Utilities and Infrastructure Committee, and it will be led by Michael Volz. He's one of our board members. He's also a panelist this morning, so you'll hear a little bit more about that. I know our first meeting will be in December, and then we'll follow through in 2022. And I'm also introducing George Sassine. He is the Vice President for Large Scale Renewables at NYSERDA. NYSERDA does some wonderful work, offers objective information and analysis and innovative program, technical expertise, and support really in the energy area. To tell you a little bit more about George, he leads NYSERDA's work in advancing both land-based renewable energy and offshore wind resources. He's also the founder of a nonprofit that advocates for transparency and good governance in the energy industry. Well needed. So good for you, George, as well. So I'm going to turn it right over to George to say some opening comments.
Thank you so much, Terry. Thank you for the warm introduction, and thank you to all of you for having me today and for your tireless work advocating for businesses on Long Island and driving regional economic development. It's a pleasure to be here on behalf of NYSERDA and our president and CEO, Doreen Harris. And I want to talk to you today about the work that the state of New York and especially NYSERDA is doing on clean energy and how it particularly relates to Long Island and to all of you. I want to start and anchor this discussion around the Climate Act, which is our North Star guiding policy to decarbonize New York's economy. It's called the New York Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, or the Climate Act, or the CLCPA, as you might have heard it called. And it was signed into law in 2019, and it's the most ambitious climate law in the United States. It sets very aggressive climate goals, and it's designed to drive investments in clean energy solutions, including wind, solar, energy efficiency, and energy storage in the state. And what the Climate Act specifically calls for is to get to 70% of our state's electricity to come from renewables by 2030 and 100% by 2040. And what that means, just to put some numbers around it, it starts with about 6 gigawatts of solar. And right now we're developing a roadmap to expand this to at least 10 gigawatts. It's 3 gigawatts of energy storage. It's at least 9 gigawatts of offshore wind. It's, we've set an energy efficiency goal for the state of New York to get to 185 trillion BTUs of on-site energy savings by 2025, which in other words means it's equivalent to saving enough electricity to power 1.8 million homes. And one really, notable, idea in the Climate Act is that it directs about 35 to 40% of all the benefits of clean energy investments that we do in the States to be directed towards disadvantaged communities. And the goal here is to really ensure that no New Yorker is left behind, and that, as we transition to a carbon neutral economy. The Climate Act, basically the law, mandated to develop a plan, a scoping plan on how do we actually achieve these goals. And so it established a 22-member Climate Action Council that's charged of developing this scoping plan and the recommendations on how do we achieve this climate and this clean energy agenda. And so this Climate Action Council is co-chaired by NYSERDA's president and CEO, Doreen Harris, and the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation Commissioner, Mr. Basil Sagos. And the way the process works is that they develop the scoping plan recommendation, and it includes input from 7 very sector-specific advisory panels. And there's also a couple other working groups, including the Just Transition Working Group and the Climate Justice Working Group. And each advisory panel is charged with identifying a set of recommendations on how do you meet the New York clean energy and emission goals. And I give you one example that might be relevant to all of you is there's one of the advisory panels is called the Energy Intensive and Trade Exposed Industry Advisory Panel, and it's really focused on formulating recommendations for the industrial sector in the state of New York. For all of you to know, the Climate Action Council is going to publish a draft scoping plan and make it available for public comment by the end of this year. So I invite you all to provide feedback on this. It's your opportunity to get up to speed on what are some of the recommendations that are being considered, and have your voice heard and help us evolve and improve on these recommendations. So there's going to be a set of public hearings early next year, and I highly encourage your participation in these hearings. And the next steps after this would be for the council to use this public feedback that they've received and include it and consider it as they finalize the scoping plan before it gets delivered to the governor and to the legislature in 2023, next year, by the end of the year after. So with that being said, I want to deep dive into a few areas, including offshore wind, solar, energy efficiency, energy storage, and talk about some opportunities for Long Island and for your businesses. Starting with offshore wind, New York State currently has 5 offshore wind projects that are being actively developed, and it's the largest pipeline of offshore wind projects in the United States. And in the first 2 solicitations, New York provided very strong economic benefit incentives, like up to $200 million in public funding to unlock port upgrades and attract investments in building the supply chain and the operations and maintenance for offshore wind. And in the next 10 years, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for Long Island companies specifically to participate in the industry and really help build local operations and maintenance and port infrastructure to service these projects for the next 25 plus years. So whether it's O&M base ports, whether it's providing hospitality and food services, supplying spare components, trade services, calibrating equipment, vessel chartering services. The opportunities are really, really abundant, and Long Island's geographic proximity to offshore wind makes it like a unique hub, to develop the supply chain for the industry. Now, when it comes to NYSERDA, we regularly host a lot of activities to help develop all of this and bring all different parties together. And one particular event that we're organizing next week on November 3rd and 5th is the New York Supplier Forum. And it provides an opportunity to learn more about the offshore wind industry and connect developers and suppliers that are active in the industry and bring everybody together in one event. So I highly encourage you to look this up and possibly participate if you're interested. But these are the very first steps for New York in developing the offshore wind industry, and there's next year we're looking to issue another RFP after the federal government completes a new round of leasing in the New York Bight. So this is a very exciting industry and a lot of very interesting opportunities for Long Island specifically. Next, I wanted to mention a couple points around energy efficiency, and really this is really a big part of helping us reach our climate goals, and specifically for energy intensive companies in Long Island. I would love to encourage you to think through how do you reduce your carbon emissions in your facilities? How can you convert to renewable resources when possible? Can you promote low carbon goods and services? In the short term, a lot of the strategies around energy efficiency are focused on electrifying buildings and electrifying transportation, right? But in the longer term, we also have to think about other industries, including the industrial sector. So my call here to all of you is really to start thinking about what you can do today, and in the longer term, what are some strategies for the energy intensive companies in Long Island, and what are some energy efficiency measures that you can take on and helping us collectively reach our climate goals. Another topic that's getting a lot of attention is the solar industry, and Governor Hochul has called for the expansion of our solar goals from 6 gigawatts by 2025 to at least 10 gigawatts by 2030. And with that ambitious goal comes more job creation and more economic development, and we're projecting an additional 6,000 solar jobs and projects that can power more, about 1.7 million homes, especially in disadvantaged communities. And this comes on top of the already 12,000 solar jobs already exist in New York. And Long Island specifically, when it comes to solar, is a mature solar market and has really led the way, as a self-sustaining model in residential solar, and now is going into commercial solar as well. So there's a very big market opportunity for solar, and it's going to continue on growing, and especially when it's paired with energy storage. That marriage between solar and storage is really very, very beneficial. And the Climate Act has set a really an unprecedented target for energy storage. It's about 3 gigawatts by 2030, and it's one of the largest in the nation. And my call to action for all of you is really to start exploring what is the value of energy storage specifically for some of your businesses and your facilities. And there's 2 different ways you can engage in this, whether it's installing energy storage specifically in a facility that you have, and to reduce your energy costs, or having an offsite and building community projects that would benefit all. And with that, whether it's storage or solar or offshore wind or energy efficiency, it's really about bringing new green manufacturing opportunities and new green jobs to Long Island. And it's not about building only about building these big gigafactories and port infrastructure, but it's about building a local supply chain for all these different industries. And it's a huge opportunity for new businesses, but also in retaining and growing existing industries and existing businesses. And of course, as we work on this together and collectively, there's a lot of opportunities, but there's also a lot of concerns, right? And we need to keep cost competitive. We need to keep our energy system reliable. We need to do all of this while we are decarbonizing our economy. And we can only do this, together, and by fostering a dialogue and collaborating and better understanding what are the near-term and mid-term and longer-term strategies that we need to develop. This is why, it's really critical for all of you to get engaged in the process and be part of the process as we, collectively try to, build next steps. So just to summarize in conclusion, my message to you today is really take advantage of the opportunities to comment on the Climate Action Council's draft scoping plan by the end of the year, and look out for dates to participate in public hearings, and start thinking about what are some energy efficiency measures you can take for your own facilities. And as the offshore wind industry, the solar industry, and the energy storage industry, continues on growing, it's an abundant opportunity for all of you to get involved in helping us build that local supply chain, specifically in Long Island. There's a lot of work for all of us to do. This is just the start. So my ask is that please continue being interested in this and share your expertise with us and our partners at LIPA. And and it's only together that we'll be able to decarbonize our economy. So thank you so much for having me today, and I look forward to finding ways to work together.
Thank you, George. We really appreciate your presence this morning and your comments, and we're excited to look forward to the future, what it holds for all of us. I also want to mention that if anyone has Q&A or questions, there's a Q&A field to put it in there, submit it, and we'll get to that either as we go, or we'll get to that at the end of the program. I also want to give a shout out to Lisa Broughton, who is on the call today. She's the Energy Director and Climate Action Coordinator for Suffolk County. So thanks for joining us, Lisa. So now, without further ado, I am going to introduce our moderator, who is the Contract Manager, Energy Efficiency Programs at PSEG Long Island, Walter Hofer. Walter?
Hey, Anthony, good morning. How are you? Can you hear me?
We can hear you just fine, Walter.
Very good. Okay, and that was some call to action from George. Thank you so very much for joining us this morning. Our first speaker is going to be Ross Torini. Our first panelist, I should say, is Ross Torini. He's the New York Chief Gas Operating Officer for National Grid. And as such, he's responsible for a safe and reliable operation of the New York gas system. Ross has over 36 years of experience in engineering, asset management, construction, project management, gas utility operations, supply chain, and procurement. Ross is a graduate of the United States Military Academy at West Point and holds a BS in civil engineering, as well as an MBA from Oklahoma City University. He started his career as a combat engineer officer for the United States Army Corps of Engineers, then worked for Brown and Root Industrial Services doing major petrochemical and government construction projects. Ross started at National Grid 28 years ago as a gas operations and construction field supervisor. During his tenure, he has held positions of increasing responsibility, including Director of Gas Construction, Director of Gas Investment Planning and Resource Management, Vice President of U.S. Procurement, Vice President of Gas Engineering, Acting Senior Vice President of U.S. Network Strategies, Electric and Gas, and most recently as the U.S. Chief Gas Engineer. Ross is on the Board of Directors for the American Gas Association and Northeast Gas Association. Without further ado, Ross, please take it away.
Well, thanks, Walter, for that really actually humbling introduction. And thanks for the opportunity to come and address everybody about our vision for a clean energy future. So just really briefly, a little bit about National Grid. You know, we're one of the largest utilities in New York State. We operate in upstate New York, gas system from Syracuse all the way up to Albany, and electric from Albany to Buffalo. You know, in downstate New York, we really run the gas system in Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, and on Long Island. And more specifically on our Long Island business, you know, we serve over 600,000 gas customers on Long Island, including the Rockaway Peninsula. We operate 8,000 miles of gas distribution and transmission main, and we have 2,100 employees. Actually, I think we should be on the first slide right now. I'm sorry. Yeah, there we go. My apologies. We also own generating units on Long Island, about 3,800 megawatts, big steam units, and 42 gas turbine units at 10 sites across Long Island. And all those generating units are under contract for LIPA. When I talk with my team all the time, we really focus on 4 priorities: delivering safe, reliable, affordable, and really enabling the clean energy transition. So we are focused, and we do have commitments for all of our customers to mitigate our bill impacts, because you know, the energy transition is incredibly important, and we are a big proponent of all the science behind climate change, and solving climate change is one of the major problems facing our generation right now, and we are committed to net zero. But we do, as you guys said, some of the opening comments, you know, focusing in on how we manage that energy transition and delivering affordability for our customers is extremely important, as well as improving our customer experience, investing in modernizing our energy infrastructure to improve safety, reliability, but also to enable the clean energy transition, to engage with our stakeholders. And just recently, in September, across all in New York State, we initiated Project C with a day of volunteering for all our employees, where we had 1,000 employees out involved in communities that we serve, doing beautification projects at about 50 different sites. Me personally, I attended one up with doing some plantings up in Green Lawn, and a veterans flag raising in Green Lawn too. And then again, focus back in on the clean energy future. So if we could flip the slide. I know this is really what we really want to talk about. It's really about the net zero vision and how we achieve that. And, you know, having ambitious goals, as George has said up front, is incredibly important, because this is a defining problem for our society and the world and our generation. But having a pragmatic approach on how we get there is important. So when we talk about the energy transition, it really is a transition, and it's not a revolution, it's an evolution. That's why we talk about our goals by 2030, 2040, 2050 to get to net zero. And it took us, you know, 100 years to build out the original energy systems that we're using now. So, you know, to rebuild the energy systems in 30 years is a really ambitious goal. And one of the big challenges, especially for communities and utilities in more northern climates is that the gas systems typically deliver 2 to 3 times the energy of the electric systems at their peaks. So being really thoughtful on how we make that transition and how we get to net zero is incredibly important. The other factor we have to do is when you take a look at this and being pragmatic is, construction constraints. I joke with my team, the only thing harder to build in downstate New York, and I'm a former Long Island Lighting Company guy, that's where, and I'm born and raised on Long Island, is to build a nuclear power plant. And when you start to talk about just building any energy infrastructure, whether it's gas, electric, generation, even offshore wind and solar, right? It's really, really hard because nobody wants any any energy infrastructure built where they live. So having a pragmatic approach on how we get there, you start to realize that you have to think about how you utilize all your existing assets in order to enable that transition. So the picture that you see here really depicts sort of our vision on how we think that the energy transition is going to play out. I had in my previous role, I was actually our global group chief engineer for all our gas businesses across the world, including the UK, and had the opportunity to participate over the last 5 or 6 years with them as they started to focus on this energy transition. And one of the things that they got about 2 or 3 years into it is they recognized that low carbon fuels in their gas systems are going to be an important part of delivering energy as part of that transition. So when you look at northern climates like ours, and you look at the fact that the peak is on the gas system is 2 to 3 times the electric, you start to focus in on a suite of products and technologies that are going to enable that energy transition. Renewables, solar and wind are going to be a big part of it. Battery storage, right? Energy storage is an incredible part of it. But when you start to look at the gas system of the future, it's not that there's going to be no gas system, but there's going to be less gas. And that gas is going to be very different. It's going to be a low carbon fuel. And that low carbon fuel is going to be made out of renewable natural gas, which you can get from various feedstocks. One that's particularly abundant in upstate New York is dairy farm waste, right? Or wastewater treatment plants. And we've actually are getting set to commission a wastewater treatment biogas plant in New York City here in the spring, where we'll be able to start to produce about 1,000 customers worth of RNG on a daily basis to enter in our system. But when you start to talk about low carbon fuels and the vision, it's going to be RNG, it's going to be hydrogen, and it's going to be hydrogen blending. And hydrogen can be produced a number of ways, but the vision, the final vision would be green hydrogen, where you're using excess renewable power through electrolysis, you're splitting water and you're producing hydrogen that would then be mixed in with your gas system. And you would produce low carbon fuel that would help enable industry, it would help enable generation, and it would help enable heating of buildings. So when you start to look at how you get there's not one solution, but an integrated suite of solutions that'll drive you in order to get to net zero by 2050. If we could flip the slide. There we go. So one of the other things that are going to be part of that future is both energy efficiency and demand side management. And we've just, on October 4th, filed an unprecedented demand side management filing with New York State Public Service Commission to help reduce our customer energy uses, lower greenhouse gas emissions, improve system reliability on the coldest days, and help reduce the need to build new gas infrastructure. So the part of that program, there's weatherization incentives, significant expansion of demand response programs, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later in a slide, but we've actually operated probably the largest demand response program over the last 30 years in the gas industry, where on the coldest days of the year, we have temperature controlled customers who are dual fuel, who we have control over, and we switch off of the gas system onto alternate fuels in order to enable us to manage our reliability and safety for our firm customers all the way down to 0 degrees. We have launched new demand response programs, daily demand response, bring your own regulator, bring your own thermostat, and a behavioral demand response program, as well as we are focusing in on how we can partner with people on the electrification of heat. If we can flip the slide. We are currently involved in a lot of hydrogen research. One currently out on Long Island is partnered with Stony Brook's Institute of Gas Innovation and Technology and NYSERDA to assess how much hydrogen can be blended in natural gas systems. We're actually looking to put together some demonstration projects on Long Island to sort of prove out how Long Island can be a hydrogen hub and help enable the future. In addition, we're also involved in a groundbreaking partnership with the Electric Power Research Institute and the Gas Technology Institute, focusing in on low carbon fuels in order to enable net zero. It's a consortium of over 50 manufacturers, utilities, public power authorities. It's $100 to $120 million 5-year program, doing all the research on development on all low carbon fuels from RNG all the way through hydrogen and hydrogen blends. If we could flip the slide, please. Energy efficiency, as George said up front, is going to be a big part of achieving net zero. So we've got business programs and incentives open. We've got residential programs. The impact of our energy efficiency programs on Long Island through 2021, we've actually had a savings of 2.2 million decatherms, and there's some contact information down here at the bottom of the slide if you want more information. If we can flip. So just a little bit more about our downstate New York gas demand response program for firm customers. We've got some new programs. They're typical. The enrollment ended 10/15. The enrollment period is 8/1 through 9/30, so it will be open again next year. But there are a number of different programs that you can use, from daily demand response to hourly demand response, that you can sign up for and get incentives for. The programs are offered to our firm, commercial, industrial, and multifamily customers in Brooklyn, Queens, and Long Island. They've been expanded for the last 4 or 5 years. And we have more than 200 participants enrolled this year, with more than 21,000 decatherms enrolled. So it's growing. As we continue in the future, it's going to be a bigger part of our energy portfolio. And will help us enable net zero. It is a big part of our distributed infrastructure plan that we put in place after the Nessie pipeline decision was not to build that. Where we've actually looked at expanding our LNG plant in Brooklyn to provide more gas supply. We've built 4 CNG sites on Long Island, compressed natural gas sites that we can use to inject gas into our system on the coldest days of the year. We're in the process of building a 5th site. And demand response and energy efficiency are also big parts of that program. If we can flip the slide. So our net zero strategy for heat is really focusing in on to continue to reduce methane emissions through modernizing our infrastructure and our commitment to smart infrastructure solutions. On Long Island, we're replacing over 120 miles of gas main a year, which are good construction jobs that we have on Long Island, but they also help renew our gas system, make it hydrogen ready for the future, as well as reduce greenhouse gas emissions from leaks. We have an aggressive ramp up on demand side management. We're looking to scale up renewable natural gas as a lower carbon energy source. We're working on hydrogen blending into our gas networks. We're deploying an extensive dual fuel heating systems for gas customers, electric heat pumps integrated with gas backup for the coldest days. And then also geothermal networks will be a big part of this as non-pipe alternatives to providing heat. So if we can flip the slide. And I think that really sort of covers everything that we want to talk about here today. But just in a quick review, National Grid, we're committed to a clean energy future. We've got teams of people working on this right now. We see the gas systems and low carbon fuels as being an important part of this. And we're excited to work with everybody on helping this make this safe, reliable, and affordable transition to clean energy. So thank you for the time.
All right, Ross, thank you so much for your presentation. For the audience, I wanted to make sure that we reminded them that the Q&A will be occurring at the end of the presentation. So we'll hear from Michael Volz first, and then the questions that you're putting into the Q&A section will be addressed at that time. Okay, so Michael Volz is the Director of Energy Efficiency and Renewables for PSEG Long Island. He is responsible for planning, implementing, and evaluating energy efficiency and renewable programs and the preparation of a Utility 2.0 plan, including efficiency, advanced meters, battery storage, electric vehicles, and renewable solutions. Prior to his current role, Michael was a director at LIPA and at Central Hudson Gas Electric, where he had worked for 30 years in power generation, customer services, energy efficiency, and regulatory affairs. In his current role, Michael is an active participant in the Reforming Energy Vision proceeding. He serves on the board of directors for the Hauppauge Industrial Association and the board of the Boy Scouts Theodore Roosevelt Council. Michael graduated from Farmingdale State College and then went on to obtain a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute and a master's in business from Union College. He is a licensed professional engineer in New York State. Michael, take it away.
Thank you, Walter, and good morning, everyone. First, I'd like to just say Dan Eichhorn, our President, Chief Operating Officer, sends his regrets. He really wanted to be here. He had a Board of Trustee meeting with LIPA this morning. They normally hold their board meetings on Wednesdays, and they had one today. So Dan sends his apologies, but I will go through the slides and cover as much material as I can and answer questions after the presentation. So if you go to the next slide, Walter, or Ali, thank you. So I'm going to cover PSEG Long Island's mission, our major storm enhancement plan. You heard from Georges this morning about the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, or the Climate Act. I'll talk about some forecast grid evolution and beneficial electrification, a little bit about our electric vehicles program, and just to touch upon a new substation we installed in the vicinity of the Innovation Park at Hauppauge about a year and a half ago. Next slide. So at PSEG Long Island, we've been the supplier for all the electricity on Long Island now for the last 7 or 8 years. And our mission is really to build an industry-leading electric service company. We always place safety first in everything we do, provide excellent customer service, best-in-class reliability and storm response, opportunities for energy efficiency and renewables, local, caring, and committed employees. And we bring that spirit to everything that we do for all of our customers. Next slide. So major storm enhancement plan. Many of you have lived through Hurricane Sandy and Tropical Storm Isaias last summer. Those were some difficult times for Long Islanders, power outages, and we're doing everything that we can now on every front, from technology to our ETR, which stands for Estimated Time of Restoration. It's very important for our customers not only to restore power in a timely fashion, but to give them a reasonable time frame. Is it going to be 24 hours? Is it going to take 30 hours to restore my power? Maybe I'll be back in 2 hours, depending on the nature of the outage. So we've really put a lot of effort into improving and try to eliminate the damage that may occur with storm hardening, but then also, to the extent that there are power outages, better communication, information. When we say foreign crew processing, that's on major storms. We often bring crews in from off Long Island to support our existing workforce. So all this comes together to provide better service. And, as you saw earlier this week, there was some heavy winds and rain. And, while we did have some power outages, we certainly were able to keep those outages to a minimum and provide those customers with reasonable expectations as to when the power could be restored. So if we go over to the next slide. This one you've heard from George this morning. It's just another way to portray the Climate Act, which, as George mentioned, it's a major initiative for New York State, probably one of the most far-reaching climate acts in the entire country. So by 2025, 185 trillion BTUs of energy efficiency savings. That comes from all fuels, electricity, natural gas, propane, fuel oil, et cetera. 1.5 gigawatts of energy storage and 6 gigawatts of solar energy by 2025. And then by 2030, 70% renewables, 10 gigawatts of solar, which is a recent increase from Governor Hochul, and 3 gigawatts of energy storage. And then 9 gigawatts of wind. Much of that is offshore wind, which significantly will affect Long Island and Long Island businesses. And then 100% clean energy by 2040. And then by 2050, 85% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, not only from the electricity sector, but from all of our, all areas of the economy. So over on the next slide, I show how New York State is doing on the Long Island specifically. If you go to the next slide, HIA-LI. Thank you. So if you read the paragraph, I probably could have put it in bold, but this is all by 2025. So what I did is I took the Climate Act goals for New York State and I took the Long Island portion of those goals and said, how much is Long Island going to contribute to the overall state effort? And each of these goals in 5 major areas, energy efficiency, 7, and I looked at 2025 in all cases. So by 2025, we're expected to have 7.85 trillion BTUs of energy savings, energy efficiency from buildings. And the blue graph, as you can see, we're about 37% of the way there in the first 3 years. This would be 19, 20, and 2021. So we're about 3 years into it, and we're a little more than 1/3 of the way toward our 2025 goal. Heat pumps on Long Island, electric heat pumps. The goal is to get to 30,000. Again, we're a little more than 1/3 of the way there on electric heat pumps. Energy storage and electric vehicles, the next 2 graphics depictions, those are the ones that were the furthest away from getting to the goal by 2025. Energy storage is a great technology, but it tends to be very expensive, and there's long lead times in the necessary battery storage installations. And this is not only residential and commercial businesses who can certainly install battery storage in their homes and businesses, but also utility scale storage that might be installed at an electric substation. There are 2 out of that 17 megawatts in the blue area. 10 out of the 17 megawatts are large utility scale projects that are located out on the South Fork, out in the Hamptons. And the other 7 megawatts are made up of numerous residential homeowners who have installed battery storage, typically in conjunction with a solar installation. And electric vehicles, the goal is to get to almost 180,000 electric vehicles by 2025. To put it in perspective, there are about 2 million passenger vehicles on Long Island right now. The vast majority of those are gasoline vehicles with some diesel and some electric vehicles mixed in. As you can see, out of the 2 million vehicles, there's about 24,000 electric vehicles on the roads right now in Long Island. So that's a little over 1% of the total electric vehicles on Long Island. By 2025, we're attempting to grow that from a share of about 1% up to about 10% of the total vehicles on the road by 2025. So that's a heavy lift, but we're doing everything we can. And I have more slides later to talk about some of the initiatives that we have to help homes and businesses install the necessary infrastructure for charging those vehicles. And with regard to solar PV, I know we have some contractors on the line today, solar contractors. We're doing very well. Out of all these 5 areas, solar PV is the most significant, the closest to reaching the goals that Governor Hochul has laid out and her predecessors before her. We're about 93% on Long Island of the saturation of solar that we would need to be in order to be on track to meet the goals by 2025. So if we go over to the next slide. This is I like to use this slide in several presentations that I've used, because what it shows, the dark black line is the total sales of electricity from 2010 until 2020. And as you can see, almost every year, the sales of electricity on Long Island have gone down. And that's not for lack of economic activity or new home construction. There's a pretty robust economy on Long Island, but it's a more efficient use of electricity. So while the economy has grown and there's more jobs and more homes being built, we are actually using less electricity now than we were 10 years ago. We expect that trend to continue. And let me just point out the reason there's all these individual colored lines. Every year, PSEG Long Island, since we took over the operation of the grid on Long Island, we've produced an electric sales forecast every year since 2013. And as you can see, the very first forecast back in 2013 anticipated growth of sales of electricity to about 25,000 gigawatt hours by 2022. What's actually happened is we've dropped from 23,000 down to about 20,000. So the forecasts every year have gone down. And our most recent forecast that we put together in 2021 shows that we would expect to continue to have decreasing sales of electricity as a result of all the energy efficiency and the solar installations until about 2027. We then expect the increase of sales as a result of electric vehicles taking more and more of a market share from gasoline, and also electric heat pumps taking a greater share of heating oil and natural gas, which are now the predominant forms of heating homes on Long Island. So I find this graph very interesting because it tells a lot of stories just in the lines, as to what we expect, what's been happening, and what we expect to happen in the future from the sales of electricity. And this is all driven by consumer behavior. What type of cars do they drive? What kind of heating systems the customers install? What kind of light bulbs? The lighting is LED lighting is primarily what's driven the graph down. And what we expect to turn it back around is heat pumps and electric vehicles. So if we move over to the next slide, this is just another depiction of we call it the system load factor. If you had all electricity on the same amount every hour of the year, we would be using the system at 100% efficiency. And in reality, we're using it in the low to mid 40%, meaning that on some days in the hot summer months, we're using 5,000 or 5,500 megawatts. And on a day like today, we're only using 2,000 or 3,000 megawatts. So on average, over the course of the year, we're using about 46% of the capacity that the electric system has to deliver energy for our customers. And the growth in load factor is actually a good thing, because what it shows is that we're using the grid more efficiently by growing up to about 46%. Again, that's a result of increased use of electric vehicles, which charge primarily at night, and increased use of electric heat pumps, which are mostly using energy in the winter months when we have spare capacity. Right now, our summer peak is about 5,500 megawatts, and our winter peak is only about 3,000 megawatts. So there's plenty of spare capacity to increase sales of electricity in the winter months with highly efficient electric heat pumps. So if we go over to the next slide. Takes a little time to move. I'll just move quickly through this one. We saw a similar slide from George at NYSERDA, but basically it just shows how the future of energy use in the home is very different than the way it was 20 years ago. Electric vehicles in the garage, solar panels on the roof, battery storage systems, smart appliances. And the idea behind this graphic is that the future of energy use in the home is not just one-way flow of electricity from the power generators to the home, but also from the home back into the grid, putting energy back into the system from battery storage and solar panels. So we can go over to the next slide. This just shows our advanced metering. And if you look at the small islands, the graphics from 2018, much lighter color. And the darker the color, the more the deployment of advanced metering infrastructure. The reason advanced metering is important to you is it's a way to more accurately, not more accurately, but more timely usage information. Instead of waiting till the end of the month to see how much electricity you used, every one of our homes and businesses now, with a very few exceptions, where we have about 95% deployment of advanced metering. You can go through what we call My Account, and you can see your 15-minute electricity consumption if you're interested, or you can look at it once an hour. You can look at it monthly, but it shows you how and when you're using energy within your business. So you may see that during certain months of the year, maybe in July and August, your business may use twice as much energy as it uses in the winter months, maybe certain hours of the day when all of your workers come in or when a certain process starts. So I think it's very helpful to to be able to see your usage information. It also makes us as the utility more efficient in being able to gather the metering information and render an accurate electric bill. So we can move on. Just some more benefits of advanced metering. We get the customer, as I mentioned earlier, we can do remote meter reading. Advanced rates, we can have more innovative rates that allow you to pay different prices during different times of the day. Storm support, if we have an outage, we can tell from, we call it pinging the meter. We can send a signal out and see if your power's out without having to drive a truck out to the building to see if the power's been restored yet. So we can move on to the next. So beneficial electrification, I touched on this a little bit earlier. The idea of, and I know Russ touched on it in the presentation as well, as the gas system, natural gas system becomes more strained in the winter months, promotion of electric heat pumps is a beneficial use of electricity. Heat pumps have a coefficient of performance of between 3 and 4. What that means is for every BTU of energy you put into a heat pump, you get between 3 and 4 BTUs of heat in the winter months into your home or business. So in effect, it's 300 to 400% efficient use of electricity for an electric heat pump. And you can see in the lower right, there are many other beneficial electrification, battery powered lawn equipment, much cleaner and quieter than gasoline, electric vehicles similarly, and in commercial buildings, electric forklifts, battery powered lawn equipment tend to be cleaner and more efficient and often quieter than their fossil fuel counterparts. So we can move on. I wanted to touch on economic development programs briefly. We do have many economic development programs. Feel free to reach out to me later or go to our website if you plan on an expansion of your business or relocation of your business. I'm not going to go through all of these, but the point of the next 3 slides, and I'll go through them quickly, is that PSEG Long Island supports economic development. We're a part of the community. We believe in helping businesses grow and expand and attracting businesses to Long Island. And we're doing everything that we can to support a vibrant manufacturing base and industrial base, as well as commercial buildings. So this slide and the next one, if you can move on. This is for small businesses, but these are very similar. Main Street Revitalization Program. We have incentives to help some of our downtown areas on Long Island revitalize some of the old buildings that may have been abandoned or not fully utilized. And the next slide. Vacant space, similar to the Main Street revitalization. If there's a vacant space, commercial buildings that haven't been used, we'd really like to assist the building owners to develop those buildings into usable space and continue with our vibrant small business communities. And the next. So this one is directly in my area of expertise at PSEG Long Island. We have many rebate programs for commercial businesses, ranging from indoor lighting to outdoor lighting, heating, ventilating, air conditioning, electric heat pumps, refrigeration. It's all available on our website. Walter and I and many others on my team can help if any business owner is thinking about upgrading a building, putting in variable frequency motor drives, more efficient lighting, hot water systems, any kind of efficiency improvements that you intend or plan on doing in your building. We'll work with you, and we have rebates to help mitigate the cost of those upgrades. Next. Solar and battery storage. So as I showed in the earlier graphic, Long Island is doing extremely well with regard to residential solar. We now have over 60,000 homes on Long Island that have solar on their rooftops. That's about 6% of the total homes on Long Island. Not too many of those have battery storages, but there are over 1,000 systems on Long Island and growing. Many of the new solar installations that are going in with battery storage. I just did a presentation last week at a homeowner who installed some power walls. And the new program, if you go on to the next slide, I'll go into some of the details that are beneficial for this. So a battery storage system can help customers to improve the resiliency in the event that there is a power failure. The battery storage can keep the power on. And then when you couple it with solar during the daytime, the solar can keep the lights on. And at nighttime, the battery storage can keep your power on. So it adds resiliency, but it also can help PSEG Long Island because the batteries can be discharged on a hot summer afternoon. And we have something called dynamic load management tariffs. So if you go over to the next slide, I'll touch on this a little bit. So battery storage is beneficial for the homeowner, but it also can be beneficial for the utility. So upon installation of a battery storage system, there are incentives available from NYSERDA for approximately $3,500, the bottom left column, for the installation of a battery storage system. And then every year thereafter, PSEG Long Island will pay, again, depending on the size and how often it's used, approximately $120 every year to the homeowner. And I believe this is also available for some businesses, but the payments are available for discharging those batteries on a hot summer afternoon, which helps support the electric grid and it helps all of our customers. Can move on to the next. So Long Island, this is just a graphic showing that in 2013, there was only 50 megawatts or so of overall solar capacity. And now we're up to about 720 megawatts. And the goal is to get to 750 megawatts by 2025. And we'll have to also increase that goal based on Governor Hochul's new announcement to get to 2030. So we'll have to look out past 2025 and continue to grow the solar industry on Long Island. Go to the next. So electric vehicles, we have basically these 4 subcategories of incentives for electric vehicles. Any homeowner that purchases a smart charger, we offer a $500 rebate for that. Smart Charge Rewards, if you have one of those smart chargers and you charge your vehicle between 11 at night and 6 o'clock in the morning, we will give you a 5 cent per kilowatt hour discount. That's about a 25% discount on your electric bill. Basically, for charging at night, the price is 25% lower than it would be if you charged during the daytime. So definitely encourage any of you out there, any of your friends, family, anyone that owns an electric vehicle, if you get a smart charger rebate, put a smart charger in the garage and you can get the rewards for charging at night. The DC fast charging these are large public charging stations that are often located in public areas along the Long Island Expressway or in a retail parking lot. And our most recent program is that PSEG Long Island is working. We put a budget together over the next 4 years, about $80 million, to help build out public infrastructure. We call it Make Ready, but this is all the underground cables and the switches and the transformers that are necessary to power up the public charging stations, which are typically built and owned by a third party. We have incentives to put the infrastructure in place so that those that do drive electric vehicles won't be as concerned about running out of charge and not being able to fill up. So we can move on to the next. I mentioned the $500 rebate for Smart Charge Rewards. This program is expected to continue for another 3 to 4 years out into the future. Next slide. The rewards program, there's the 5 cents per kilowatt hour discount if you charge between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. Over on the lower right, the orange part of the graph, you'll see on average, if you drive typical driving pattern, 7 kilowatt hours a day, we issue a rebate on a quarterly basis. So the average customer is going to give up $25 every 3 months. So it's about $100 a year back for the nighttime charging. Next. This just shows how the program that I mentioned is really working. The peak you can see at 1 o'clock in the morning over on the left. At 1 o'clock in the morning, customers are using 20,000 kilowatt hours. The cumulative effect of all of our 3,000 or so customers that are on this program collectively are using about 20,000 kilowatt hours at 1 o'clock in the morning and probably only 2,000 kilowatt hours in the middle of the day. And then again at 11 o'clock at night, it jumps up because the discount starts at 11 p.m. So you can see that customers are really reacting to our incentives by plugging in their vehicles and programming. I should stop and mention almost all of these chargers and the vehicles themselves to start charging at 11 o'clock at night. So even if you plug it in at 5 p.m. when you get home from work, the charging won't begin until 11 p.m. if you set it up that way. So you can take full advantage of our nighttime discounts by just programming your vehicle to charge during the nighttime hours. Go over to the next slide. And this shows that before we launched the program, you can see on the left side of the graph, these same customers were charging about 33%. So about 1/3 of the charging was at night, 2/3 of the charging was during the day. We launched the program, it immediately jumped to 44% in July. And as customers became more aware of the discounts that they could get, most of our customers collectively now are about 75% of all charging is taking place during the nighttime hours. So very beneficial for the customer to save money, and it helps support the electric grid by not charging during those peak hours when the system is stressed. Just a couple more slides and then I'll wrap up. We'll have about a half hour for questions and answers as well. So we can move to the next one. I mentioned the Make Ready program. So for anyone that business owner that might be thinking about putting in charging stations for your employees, these are workplace charging, for example. You'll see the yellow arrow on the left in this graphic. We'll put that that infrastructure in up to the meter. Typically on any kind of a business expansion or any kind of electrical work, everything on the customer side of the meter is paid for by the customer, and the utility pays for the utility side. What happens in this situation for electric vehicles is we take the sum of the utility and the customer side, and depending upon whether or not the charger is fully public or if it's only available for your employees, it would be anywhere from 50 to 90% of that cost would be paid for by PSEG Long Island. So in the case of workplace charging, we take the utility side and the customer side, the total dollars, and we offer to pay 50% of that cost would be reimbursed. And in the case of a fully public charging that might be out in a parking lot where anyone who owns an electric vehicle is able to charge, we would actually pay for 90% of that make ready cost. So we can go on to the next slide. This is my last slide. I just wanted to mention that about 2 years ago, in March of 2020, we fully completed our Kings Highway substation. This substation is located in the vicinity of the Innovation Park at Hauppauge, and it's just a more resiliency and support for the expansion and growth of the industrial park. And it's available. It provides 100 MVA of overall system capacity. It provides availability for future expansion and load growth in the area, and it should enhance customer reliability. We shortened some of the circuit lengths from the other substations that used to serve the area to this new substation that went into service in March of 2020. So I'll stop there. We have 25 minutes or so remaining on our overall program. I know Ross and I will both be available for some questions. I think Walter's going to tee up some of the questions and then we can respond.
Yep. Okay, very good. Thanks, Mike. I do want to point out, was a question in the chat that the presentations will be and sent out to the attendees of today's event. So that answers that question that was in the chat. The first question I have up is from Scott Maskin. He's a HIA board member as well as principal of Sun Nation. And he's expressed concern about the new community benefit charge that's put on solar that the Public Service Commission passed for other utilities around the state, and the Long Island Power Authority is currently considering it. So Scott writes that while we set huge targets to hit consistently, the PSC votes to impose charges and devalue distributed generation through solar. The inclusion of the VEDR calculations have destroyed the community solar market throughout the state. The state needs consistency to concede, and that's Scott's point. I don't know if Mike or if Ross have anything they want to add to that, or how do we want to respond?
Yeah, Walter, I can touch upon that. So the State of New York Public Service Commission ordered all the utilities in New York State to put this community or customer benefit charge. Basically, that charge pays for all the energy efficiency and renewable and demand response and electric vehicle, all the basically community benefit programs that PSEG Long Island and other utilities offer in the state. And in order to be fair and equitable to all customers on Long Island, although let me back up, because LIPA has not yet adopted this charge. So it'll be up to the LIPA Board of Trustees. I can't speak for whether they'll approve it, but the other utilities in New York State, at the direction of the Public Service Commission, put this charge. It's a relatively small charge, it's $10 per month for a customer who puts on solar beginning in January of 2022. And it just goes to support the energy efficiency and renewable programs that are available to all customers, regardless of whether you have solar on the roof or not. So even those customers that have solar, they're eligible for lighting, LED lighting rebates and electric vehicle charger rebates and heat pump rebates. So that's what the charge covers. It's just a charge that's been proposed to cover all the energy efficiency programs.
Okay, that's the first question. Next one's an anonymous attendee, and this is to the entire panel. So Ross can take the first shot at this. What policies and steps would you recommend that towns on Long Island include in their long-term planning to reflect the coming changes in the energy sector?
So from my perspective, right, the biggest thing we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to build out a lot of infrastructure, right? So I think it's important for us as a utility, right, to strike the right relationships with the town, to let you guys understand, what our vision is, what we see coming, what infrastructure we're going to have to build within your localities, and work proactively on how we will get that permitted and put in place. Because I think that's going to be one of the biggest challenges when we start to really do the energy infrastructure investment that's necessary to enable a net zero future, is the build out of these energy systems. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we could partner with our local municipalities on.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll just add to what Ross mentioned. I would think that if you're a government, municipal, someone responsible for a municipality, should be thinking about possibly electrifying your vehicles, depending upon the nature of the municipality. There's probably a lot of vehicles, gasoline and diesel vehicles. So start thinking about the possibility of putting in charging stations for those vehicles, and then converting over, over a gradual time period, some of your gasoline and diesel vehicles. I think that would be beneficial over the long term. And then also consideration, depending upon the age of your existing equipment in your building, certainly consider upgrading all your lighting. If it's not done already, all your lighting should be LED lighting, both indoors and outdoors. Any street lights that are still, older technology should be converted over to LED. I would think those are some of the areas you'd want to be considering in your long range plans.
Okay, thank you both. Next one, I think, Mike, you might be the one for this one. It says, can you please describe the benefit of battery storage with solar panels, which you discussed earlier?
Yeah, I'll try to add to what I mentioned earlier. So the benefit of the battery storage is that if there were to be a power outage that lasts more than 4 hours or so, and particularly if it happens in the evening, you would be able to use that battery storage system similar to what some homeowners use as an emergency generator, but you don't need to put any gasoline in it or propane or any other fuel. So if the battery is fully charged and the power goes out during the daytime, your solar can provide power for your home. And then during the nighttime hours, or if it's cloudy out, like unfortunately it's been for the last few days, you would be able to use your battery to keep your power running and, and your refrigerator and all your appliances. So that's the primary benefit. But then secondarily, if you make the investment in a solar and battery system, you might as well get the benefit of a payment every year of about $120 from us for discharging that battery. In other words, it's a resource. Once you've made the investment, putting it in your home or business, it's a resource that's available, and PSEG Long Island is willing to pay. Again, for a single system, it's about $120 per year. For multiple systems, it would be more, and that would go on, each and every year at the end of each summer, you would give us permission to discharge the battery on those hot summer critical days. And for a few hours, 3 to 4 hours is our typical window. And you would never know, if you're in the home, the lights don't flicker, the battery just discharges into the grid. And it's seamless for the homeowner. So those are some of the benefits of battery storage: is resiliency, and then an extra income stream of about $120 every year for the next 10 years or so.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Charlie Ward. What is the extent of the dependency between the Long Island energy transition and the federal infrastructure bill currently with Congress?
I'm not totally familiar with the infrastructure bill. Certainly, it's hasn't been passed yet. I'm not completely aware of all the incentives that might be available. I know that PSEG Long Island is upgrading our own infrastructure with our capital plan, that we work through LIPA on capital improvements, and then we have incentives for electric vehicle chargers that we filed on July 1st of this past year. Significant. I mentioned earlier, it's $80 million a year incentives for public charging for electric vehicles. My understanding is some of what's going on in Washington is going to provide some additional incentives for those, but I don't have the details on it.
Yeah, so let me just build off of what was just said. So, in that energy infrastructure bill, and again, we don't know what's going to be the final piece of it is, but there is funding for hydrogen demonstration projects, looking at that as a source of low carbon fuel. So that's one of the things that we're excited about in the energy bill. In addition, we just settled our rate case in downstate New York for Long Island, New York City, that provides over about $1 billion a year in energy infrastructure investment across Long Island and Brooklyn, Queens, and Staten Island for us to renew our system, reduce greenhouse gases, as well as increase safety and reliability. So that's a big part of everything that's going on.
Okay. And I did want to also add that Charlie said great presentations today. So congratulations to both of you for the PowerPoints that you gave today. I think we're going to go, since I see no more questions in the Q&A. Hold on one second. There might have been just one just added in. Charlie said, thank you for the answer. And then excellent, Lisa Broughton from Suffolk County. Excellent program. Thank you for shout out, Anthony. All righty. I'm going to go to another question I can probably field. Let me just throw this to both of you, but maybe we'll start with Ross with this one. What's the hardest sector to decarbonize, and what does the solution look like?
So there's really there's a lot of sections that are going to be hard to decarbonize, and heavy industry like steel production and coal, not coal, but steel production, cement production, those type of things are really hard to decarbonize. I'll put those aside for a second. But probably the most prominent one on Long Island is going to be large commercial spaces, right? And I think if you go back to the slide that I had, I think there's going to be a number of different solutions, and it'll be depending on where you are, where your geography is, how dense an area you are. It's going to be everything from heat pumps to dual fuel heat pumps, electric with gas backup. There's going to be the opportunities for combined heat and power plants for larger scale commercial usage, as well as geothermal loops in the less densely populated areas. So, we actually have a geothermal demonstration project out on the east end of the Long Island where we're heating 10 residents out there. So there's going to be lots of different options, and it just depends on your location, the size of the building, what you're doing, that one of those options will fit. The other option that's also going to be there is low carbon fuels through the gas system, right? So renewable natural gas, hydrogen blend with that renewable natural gas. So that'll actually be a part of the solution too. So there'll be a number of different options, but those larger buildings are going to be the biggest, toughest challenges on Long Island.
Very good. Michael?
Yeah, Walter, what I, unfortunately, my other phone's ringing, so you may hear a little ring in the background, but from my perspective, heating of homes and businesses, whether it's, residential or commercial space, for so many years, we've used oil and natural gas to heat our homes and to heat our, workplaces. And the electric heat pump's a great technology. It's highly efficient, but it's not as prevalent and not as many customers are aware of the benefits of an electric heat pump. And if you already have a gas pipeline into your home or business, it's going to be very difficult to convince somebody to shut that off or stop using it because it's there, unless there's some crisis in terms of price spikes or something, I do think over the next 20 years or so, it's going to be a challenge to get the complete decarbonization. I think that every year, as I showed earlier, we have a goal of 30,000 heat pumps by 2025, but there are 1 million homes on Long Island, so 30,000 is a very small percentage. And obviously businesses as well. There's 100,000 businesses on Long Island, so I think heat pumps are a great technology, but we need to continue to educate the consumer. And as Ross mentioned, geothermal heat pumps are even more efficient than an air source heat pump, but the upfront costs and the well drilling. Geothermal heat pumps typically have wells that are 200, 300 feet deep. And Long Island doesn't really have a lot of infrastructure for well drilling and installation of that type. And it tends to be expensive. So I think we'll get there, but it'll take, education of the consumer and a lot of capital investment to decarbonize the heating of buildings.
Okay, thanks, Mike. There's one question in there, which I don't think either of you can answer, which is why isn't there solar on the Suffolk County DPW watershed project? And that's from Pat Harper at Control Central. So maybe Pat can hook up with Lisa Broughton from Suffolk County and maybe address that directly. Next question we have here says, this Mike is probably for you. PSEG New Jersey has a pie chart for where their electricity is sourced from. Is it possible for PSEG Long Island to produce an article that describes exactly what percentage of our electricity is derived from renewable energy versus traditional energy?
I think the answer is yes, but it's probably not as straightforward because we have a lot of cables that connect to Connecticut and New Jersey. So a lot of our energy is imported from off Long Island, and then it's a blend of whatever the New England power grid is producing at that time. But Walter, if you get the name of the participant, I think our Power Markets Group has done something like that. They've put together, how much of it is wind and solar. So yeah, we'll follow up on that.
Okay, if that attendee will please maybe go to Anthony or Hallie and get their information to us, and we'll be happy to try and follow up on that. Okay, next question. Let's see. I just wanted to, what is your company doing to keep costs down so that businesses can compete? How's that for a question?
So I think it's a great question, and it's I talked about 4 goals for a safe, reliable, affordable, and clean. So we have an incredible amount of activities going on every day in our gas operations teams, looking at the productivity of our workforce, looking at innovative solutions, how we can reduce the cost of construction installation, for other innovative solutions so that we can avoid doing work. We have a process improvement group that looks at process improvement initiatives, not only from a safety perspective, but a customer experience perspective and an efficiency perspective. And I have ever increasing goals around driving efficiency from a cost perspective. And, this year I'm driving about $20 million in efficiencies across my businesses. And next year my goal jumps to 62 million, which is pretty significant. But we've been working hard this year in developing a plan. We're on track to achieve this year, and we think we have a good plan for next year. So, it's a big challenge. Because right now you see costs don't go up, right? Costs don't really go down when you look at our basic commodities of labor and paving and steel prices, right? So we really have to work hard to mitigate those impacts. But we have a lot of work going on.
Yeah, and at PSEG Long Island, we work for the Long Island Power Authority, so the overall, bill is a combination of everything we do, along with the financing from Long Island Power Authority. Certainly the fact that the Long Island Power Authority is a nonprofit tax exempt entity, that certainly helps keep costs down from financing. I know there have been some property tax challenges to reduce the costs at the LIPA level, and PSEG Long Island is continuing to look at everything we do in our operations, as well as our fuel supply. We have a lot of hedging on future fuel purchases that go into our power generating units. So, everything we can. I know that we haven't had a rate increase in the last 6 or 7 years above 2.5%. We've stayed, and we're doing everything we can to stay, hopefully zero, but within no more than 2.5% increases, because we're certainly sensitive to businesses and the cost pressure that everyone has on business on Long Island.
Okay, thank you both. I just want to point out to people who have a question, please use the Q&A function. But I do have a question from the chat area from someone named Jim. Will the study with Stony Brook on max hydrogen for natural gas systems include researching lining existing pipes with plastic, as it's already done with natural gas pipes? I guess, Ross, that's probably going to be your area.
Yeah, so we're looking at all the material compatibility. The plastic pipes we're installing right now are compatible with hydrogen. That's what our early research here says. Also, it's what the research that we see in Europe saying. So for us, it's more about replacing our aging infrastructure of bare steel and cast iron mains with plastic pipes that are going to be hydrogen ready for the future. We're on pace at about 120 miles a year that we're currently replacing. And we're doing studies right now with the compatibility of the hydrogen with not only with the plastic, but the steel and the cast iron. So right now, the research we see coming out of the UK, which is probably 3 to 4 years advanced from where the US is that, there really aren't any compatibility issues with renewable natural gas and hydrogen blends.
Okay, thanks, Ross. Let's see, I don't see any additional questions. I'm going to throw another one out at both of you. Having lived through Hurricane Sandy and Tropical Storm Isaias, what changes can be made to make the electric and gas systems more resilient?
Yeah, I'll start with that one. So I touched on it earlier, Walter, but we have a storm hardening plan, looking at putting in larger, stronger poles and wires, in some cases undergrounding electric infrastructure, looking at our computer IT systems to improve the outage management system. So yeah, definitely a high priority of PSEG Long Island is making sure that we have strong, resilient electric systems and procedures in place, so that if there is a damage to our electric grid, we can respond quickly, bring in outside crews if necessary, and restore power as quickly and safely as possible.
Yeah, and for us too, we have a big storm hardening program. There's a number of things that we have going on. But in particular, the biggest issue for us in the storm isn't wind, it's flooding and storm surge. So we've been replacing, one of the prioritization factors in our main replacement model is flood prone areas, right? So we're going in and replacing old, antiquated, low pressure gas systems, which are prone to get flooded and get knocked out of service with high pressure gas systems, which are much more resilient to flooding. In addition, we've got some pilot programs going on right now with automatic shutoff valves for flood-prone areas, where if the area floods, we would actually be able to automatically shut off the services in those areas to ensure safety. And then that would also help enable the restoration efforts when the floods recede.
Good. Thank you. All right, this is a question from Vin Corrado. What changes to building codes could or should be made to encourage renewables?
So obviously I'm not a code official, but you could require some wiring for electric vehicles. I know that's been discussed where new homes are built, you run a 240-volt line to the garage, for example, so that if someone does decide to convert from a gasoline to an electric vehicle, that would be available. I guess in some cases, I think maybe out in California, some code officials in some other states, not in New York, may require the installation of solar panels on new construction as as part of the code. But I'm not necessarily advocating for those, but those are some ideas that I've heard from around the country.
Yeah, and just the one that you've seen in New York City has been around. I think it was Local Law 97, which is all around energy efficiency and weatherization and insulation on the homes. I mean, I think that's one of the easy things that we can do in order to drive down energy usage.
Okay. And Ross, we'll go back to you now. What is National Grid working, or how is National Grid working to build the energy workforce of the future?
Yeah, so it's really important for us to have a strong energy workforce in the future. We're committed to a lot of STEM programs and developing young engineers. We have a big internship program every summer where we bring college engineering students in to work in our company and get an experience on the gas system. And I joke with my team a lot about it. Like, we don't have people making coffee. When these kids come in, we've got so much work to do. They get real projects. They're out in the field. They're helping us install main. They're doing engineering work. They're building databases for us. It's real live hands-on work that really gets them interested in the energy industry. We also have a Grid for Good program where we work with STEM programs and disadvantaged communities to bring people into the company to get them exposure for like a 2-week period to what's happening in the energy industry, how it works, what do we do. It's a really eye-opening experience. I've had the opportunity to talk to these kids and present to them when they come in for the program. So it's really very enlightening for them, and it just opens up new opportunities for them. Because we're going to continue to need really skilled people in the field doing the actual construction work for us, turning the wrenches, as well as engineers, managers, and leaders that can help us navigate this energy transition.
That's great. Thank you, Ross. And I think we're starting to run out of time here. So I'm going to say thank you very much to HIA for the opportunity to be the moderator of this panel. And Mike, I think you wanted to have a couple of remarks before we turn it back over to Anthony.
Yeah, thanks, Walter. I just want to announce, I know Terry mentioned it at the beginning, but I'm going to be chairing the Energy, Utilities and Infrastructure Committee of the HIA-LI. We're going to have it's not the first meeting, but we haven't had a meeting in a while. And I'm going to kick off the season with a meeting in December. I'm going to see if I can invite George or someone else from NYSERDA to come out and talk about the Climate Act. And then we can have a great discussion about how some of these provisions of the Climate Act are going to be affecting businesses on Long Island. So look for an announcement of that, probably early to mid-December timeframe. I'm hoping we can do that in person. I'll have to work with HIA and see if we can get a conference room, but it'd be nice to do an in-person meeting if most folks are vaccinated at this time. So I just wanted to mention that we can be on the lookout for that in December timeframe. Back to you, Anthony.
Thank you. I also, before I thank the panel, I just want to give a shout out to Angie Carpenter, who is the Islip Town Supervisor, who joined us this morning. Angie's always been a big supporter of the HIA-LI and a leader for the town of Islip in their economic growth. So thanks for joining us, Angie, this morning. I want to thank Ross. I want to thank Michael. You guys did a wonderful program here. Walter, great moderating as always. I do want to thank George from NYSERDA. I know there was a couple of questions for NYSERDA. We'll get them to George and we'll respond as soon as we get the answers. So I want to thank all the attendees who attended this wonderful program. And once again, thank you, panel. And everyone, hope you have a wonderful weekend and Halloween. So be safe out there. All right, thank you.
Take care.
All right.